Ag Matters is underwritten by Ag West Farm Credit. Ag West Farm Credit is a financial cooperative that provides financing, crop insurance, and related services to farmers and ranchers across the West. From small family businesses to large operations, Ag West brings the experience and financial know-how to help you grow your best future.
Welcome to Ag Matters, covering positive agriculture stories from across Alaska on Big Cabbage Radio.
Good morning, everybody. You're listening to Ag Matters. I'm your host, Ken Hoffman. I'm a farmer out in Palmer. My business's name is Matsu Microgreens, but I also have a day job, unfortunately, but it's a fun one. It's Executive Director of Alaska Farm Bureau, and our organization supports commercial farmers from across the state. And if anyone's a farmer out there, you should join. Or if you depend on a farmer, like eat food, you should also join, because farmers, you depend on a farmer for survival. So you should definitely join. So I have a friend calling in today. We have Tara from the Alaska Farmers Market Association. So Tara, thanks for calling in.
Hi, Ken. Thanks for having me.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm so happy you made the time to come on. Why don't you start with a little bit about yourself, who you are, and how you ended up in Alaska, and what your agricultural background is, and then finally how you got this job.
Sure. Well, I am from eastern Kentucky. My family has had a farm there for about 45 years. I came up to Alaska like so many others, driving the Alcan 15 years ago, just to see this beautiful place. I'd actually spent a little bit of time on the Calypso Farm and Ecology Center up in Fairbanks right after Peace Corps, many years before that. So I had an idea of what was possible up here, and it has definitely met and exceeded my expectations. But I've spent most of my career in the global public health world. After Peace Corps, I lived in Lesotho, Malawi, Madagascar, mostly working on public health issues alongside rural government. And I came to Alaska first working with Rural Cap and traveling out to some of the rural villages, which was quite an honor. And then this time around, I'm back with my kids. We've lived here now for 4 years in Anchorage. I've been working on a community public health team. And I just joined AFMA in the fall of 2025 as the executive director, because I definitely believe that food is medicine. And I was really excited to direct some of my nonprofit experience towards shoring up AFMA for the future and some of the uncertainty we've experienced, but just feeling super inspired and impressed by the farmers and the food security community and the people growing our food in Alaska. So I am in early days, but I thought it would be kind of fun to talk to you while I'm still new, because some of what I've learned, I suspect lots of people in Alaska don't know or don't think about on a daily basis.
Cool. Well, tell us about AFMA, or the Farmers Market Association. What do you guys do, and who are your members, and what kind of events do you guys put on, if you do?
Yeah, so we support the 65 farmers markets that exist in the state of Alaska, and even that number was a surprise to me. That number is actually up from 13 markets in 2005, so lots of markets coming on the scene, and those markets operate statewide. So those are primarily the people that we support, and then all of the small local farmers, and often not small, all the farmers who sell at those markets. So we have a newsletter, a listserv group of about 1,000 people who care about the local food economy in Alaska. And our members are mostly those market managers, but we're looking at sort of expanding that now and thinking about who might like to be involved in the Farmers Market Association and how best to reach them. And then one thing that's important is that we really loosely define a farmer's market as any direct-to-consumer engagement. So maybe a community-supported agriculture box that somebody subscribes to, or a farm stand or a food hub. Because in Alaska, so much of our food is imported. We're talking about really any way that we can help those farmers know that they're going to get directly to their customers. So we are happy to be ever widening that definition. And then we've had programs in the past, like a Beginning and Young Farmers Network program to bring together new growers. We define young as growing less than 10 years, so making sure that those folks know each other and are supported with grants that they might have opportunities to apply for, or technical assistance through AFMA, the Farmers Market Association, or through one another. And then we have primarily run food access programs like doubling SNAP dollars at the farmers markets or making sure that WIC and senior benefits are accepted. And then my favorite program is ending this year because it's not supported federally anymore, but I believe we are going to be able to find some private money to back this. And it is about buying all of the leftover protein and produce at the end of a farmer's market day and getting that food to food banks. And that's been happening statewide. And so it's amazing because the farmers don't have to worry about over-harvesting. They know their food is going to get into bellies. And then people who aren't able to access the markets are still able to have food that was fresh and locally grown. And we're even able to provide a stipend for the people who organize the food and make sure it stays fresh and gets to where it needs to go and connect with their local food bank or anti-hunger organization. Those are some of the things that we are trying to make sure have a long life ahead of them.
That last program, I think I took advantage of it last year and the year before. The one I was involved was called Tilth, but it was a similar thing where somebody would come by at the end of the farmer's market and gather up all the excess produce and then write me a check for it. It was awesome. It was awesome.
That's pretty great.
Yeah. So you've only been executive director for a few months now, it sounds like. What are some things that you've been learning on the job? Exciting things, new things about Alaska Ag?
Yeah. Well, actually, it's my 3-month anniversary today, which is kind of funny. Not a milestone that is often recognized in the nonprofit world, but it's fun because I feel like I've dipped my toe in and I have tons to learn, but I'm also feeling very inspired. So yeah, to your point, I think one of the big takeaways for me is who is farming in Alaska. 48% of the farmers in our state are women, and I have just been so inspired by some of the women that I've met, like farming with their kids in tow or farming across like small leased pieces of land that are not contiguous, so they're moving around, trying to grow in all these different places and growing in a regenerative way, really making the most of their soil and their land, and and doing it as like the primary breadwinner of the family. I just think that is incredible. And then also young people, like I said, we have larger proportion of our farmers are new and beginning farmers in Alaska than anywhere else in the country. And, I'm from Eastern Kentucky, so farming is just like a part of life. It's a part of sort of what you think about as an option for your future. And here I think it's more of an emerging thing as we, honor the centuries of tradition of subsistence eating and harvesting. And then we think about foodways in Alaska and how long people have been provisioning here and putting up food in times of plenty. I just think it's so neat to think about how agriculture becomes a part of that story as well, and who is really like out there in the crazy cold temperatures raising our food. Lots of people have asked me, like, what can you grow in Alaska? Like, what? There are farms in Alaska? And I say, of course there are farms in Alaska. But it's really neat to think about like who those people are, like you, Ken, and others that have figured out how to make this work. So I think that's been exciting to me. And then just really internalizing some of these numbers, like that 95% of our food is imported, and how precarious that is when you go look at the Port of Anchorage. And when you think about like what it means to fly planes out to rural communities, and if the food doesn't come, what do those store shelves look like? I'm inspired by the tribal organizations, Tyonek and others that are growing food, that are building greenhouses, that are thinking about introducing that food system into their economy as well. And yeah, just like, I've got one more. The State of Alaska Health Department just released a number that is kind of dismal, but I feel like you and I can work on this together, Ken. And that is that 8% of adults in Alaska are getting their recommended daily fruit and vegetables. So there's just so much room for helping people get more healthy food in their bodies and having that be more seasonally harvested and reliable year-round through all the different ways we already know how to preserve and store, but just really making that a part of like daily life. So I spent a lot of my early time at AFMA talking with friends and neighbors and trying to get a sense of like, if people aren't going to the farmers markets, if they would like to and they think about it and they know it's important, how can we get to a point where that is the first and most important thing that everyone does to think about how they feed their family every week, and just make sure that those vibrant centers of community life are really directly supporting our farmers, because I think there's a fair amount of people who mean to get there but kind of just don't. And that's something maybe we can change.
Yeah, for sure. I know one of the biggest criticisms about farmers markets, unfortunately, is that a lot of folks say that it's just too expensive to go to a farmer's market and buy right from the farmer. It's always cheaper to just go to Walmart or Fred Meyer's. And so what would you tell those folks that say that?
I'm glad you asked, because I think the first point is that it's not always the case, that there are lots of things that are just as inexpensive or maybe even less expensive at your farmer's market. And so we'd like to do things like compare the price of carrots and compare the price of Brussels sprouts and think about whether we can make a case for it not being more expensive. But if it is more expensive, I would say that just being able to value our food differently and think about what else do you get by supporting your farmer directly, that thinking about your environmental footprint perhaps, or thinking about the healing connection that you have with other community members when you're at the market, or what does it mean for your kids to know where their food comes from and understand that lettuce is something a person grows and is worth paying for. So I think some of it is centering how we value food in our lives, and that nutrient-dense food is really what is feeding this next generation, and it's worth investing in. And then I think when it is beyond someone's means, we've got to work on those food access programs. I love these like Fresh Bucks programs that are doubling dollars for people, or handing, extra money out to people who are able to show a WIC card and just saying, like, here's $15 for showing up, or giving the kids the money and letting them make some of those choices. So I think there's so many good reasons that local municipalities could be investing in their farmers markets as a center of commerce and connection, that there maybe are ways to support the consumer kind of at the end of that line. But I believe our food is worth paying for, and that the farmers growing it are just doing incredible work for making life in Alaska possible for the long term.
For sure.
And I guess I'll say one other quick thing, which is that when I was living in rural Malawi, I was pregnant, and I remember walking through our neighborhood market, and this is like a very rural place, no road system, no cars, and the women that are selling tomatoes are sitting on milk crates, and they've got their stand in front of them, and they're warm, and they're smiling, and they're excited. I'm pregnant, and I'm leaning down to buy my tomatoes, and there was nothing bougie. There was nothing upscale about that. This like reputation that farmers markets are for the wealthy, or they've become kind of an activity that people can do if they have that sort of free time. It's like turned from something that used to be, and still is in rural Malawi, but used to be in rural America, just the way that people connected with their neighbors. You would never have thought the better and cheaper and easier thing for my family is a grocery store shelf. So I'm hopeful we can find our way back to that connection.
For sure. I know in business school, they really focus on product differentiation. That is to say, if you have one widget that looks just like another widget, the consumer's always going to go for the cheapest option. That's just the law of economics. And so, for instance, if Rolls-Royce just marketed their vehicle as a car, people are going to always just go with a Subaru because, it's a car, I'll go with the cheapest one. But you really have to focus on product differentiation, marketing, and promotion and messaging. And I feel like that's Farmers Market Association and Farm Bureau's job, is to really show that Alaska-grown produce is different from the stuff from Fred Meyer's. It's not the same thing, so it's worth paying an extra $1. It's fresher, it's healthier, it's tastier. So what are some goals that you guys have, your board has, for 2026?
That's a great question. We are about to have a retreat at the end of February and make sure that we are very clear about those goals, because we've been a little bit in survival mode this last year. People probably have followed the story of some of the big USDA grants coming and going, and AFMA was largely staffed because we were able to be a conduit for those grants. We have a big allocation of state funds that supports our market match at the SNAP program, which I can explain in a second. And both the market match and the LFPA program, the federal program, are coming to their end. So we're figuring out how to diversify our funding, how to really have value for our markets, how to help get more customers to the markets, how to support our small farmers. So we'll be talking about all of that at the retreat. Right now we have 2 staff members, so we also have to understand that we can't do everything. But I believe that by connecting with you at the Farm Bureau and with our friends at the Food Policy Council and the Food Bank of Alaska and the Intertribal Agriculture Agency, that together, collectively, we can move forward food security for Alaska. So I'm excited about that, about thinking about collective impact. But we do have a really big thing happening in Juneau. We'll be part of Food Security Week in early February, and what we've got on the governor's desk is a request for a 5-year allocation to extend the SNAP market match program. So That program was born of a governor's allocation that is wrapping up in 2027. And what we'd like to see is to be able to continue to grow the number of markets, farmers markets across Alaska, that can accept our food assistance program and that can double the dollars Family on SNAP is able to spend. So they show up, they show their SNAP card, and they intend to spend $40 at the market. Well, that is $80 in actual market money, and so they're able to buy more with that money and make the farmers market a part of their lives. So that's what we're really hoping to move forward, and if that is successful, then we'll be enrolling more and more markets in those benefits in the year to come.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tara, for coming on. I'll spend the rest of the show talking to Brad. All right, so now we're going to talk to Brad St. Pierre. He's the president of the Farmers Market Association. He serves on the board, but he also has so many other hats. He has his own market garden, and he's also the executive director, I believe, of the Tanana Valley Farmers Market, which is possibly the largest farmers market in Alaska, or at least one of the biggest in Fairbanks. So, Brad, thanks for taking the time to come on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. I love talking about farmers markets.
We talked to Tara, learned a lot about Alaska Farmers Market Association. So, going into you, could you talk a little bit about how you got involved with the Farmers Market Association? What's your background? What's your history?
Sure. Well, so it's kind of a long one. I began running the farmers market here in Fairbanks 13 years ago. And about 10 years ago, the Homer Farmers Market Manager got farmers market managers all across the state together, and we revived the Farmers Market Association that had been begun by Division of Agriculture years ago. And so I started kind of at the beginning again, and with the intention of uniting all the farmers markets around the state, be able to succeed and support the farmers that are there. So we, in 2005, when AFMA first was thought of, there were 13 markets listed throughout the state, and today there are 65. So we've seen a major growth in this industry. It's the fastest growing sector of agriculture in Alaska, and I think it's a really, really important one for the farmers that we have here. And so that's kind of my history with AFMA.
Why do you think there was such explosive growth?
You know, what we have seen, Alaska leads the nation in new and beginning farmers, the last USDA census, and the majority of that increase are farms that are growing on 9 acres or less and selling direct to consumers through CSA farmers markets and farm stands. And I think the reason for that is that the farmers in Alaska have found that is the financially viable model for the scale of farm that they have. And many of them believe in growing practices that really work better on a scale that is a little smaller, regenerative practices, sustainable practices. And it's important for me as a farmer that I'm feeding my community, that all the work that I put into growing the food that I am goes to the people around me. So I think that those reasons, and also I think farmers markets, you know, I tell people often that people don't just go to the farmers market to feed their bellies, they also go to feed their souls. That connection between the farmer and the community, it's really healthy for the communities and it's really healthy for the farmers. So I think there's a lot of reasons that we've seen that growth.
So I know Farmers Market Association, it was started because of all the farmers markets directors got together. And I'm wondering, does AFMA also serve the consumer in a way? Do you guys have resources for folks that are wanting to shop at a farmer's market but can't find any or don't know how to shop, don't even know what's in season? Do you guys have any resources for those kinds of folks?
Great question, Ken. Yeah, we do. We actually have a seasonal food wheel that folks can find on our website, which is alaskafarmersmarkets.org. That kind of shows people what's in season, what time of year, what they can find at their farmers markets around the state. And we also have farmers market map, all the farmers markets across the state, their contact info and where you would find them. So if you were driving around Alaska trying to check off all the boxes, we have a way for you to get to where they are and the times and dates they are. So yeah, we facilitate not just the market organizers and the farmers that are at the markets, but we definitely are trying to facilitate our community members to be there.
Awesome. So I want to talk about some of your dreams and goals for, let's just say, farmers markets in Alaska or food security in Alaska. You know, what are some goals that AFMA has for 2026 and beyond to help farmers markets in Alaska? And what would you see as the ideal situation in Alaska? I know right now we're importing something like 95 to 99% of our food. What are some ways you think that we could drop that percentage point?
My vision and goals for 2026 and going forward is that we make the food that is grown in our state accessible to all Alaskans. And, that number of 5% of our food being produced here, I think a real way to increase that is that folks make the decision to prioritize shopping locally before they shop for anything else. Much onus is put on the producers to produce more. If all of our farmers at markets were sold out by noon, they would grow more. So consumers have real power in making that number jump. I feel like if people learn to eat seasonally, to really purchase as much as they can from the farmers when it's in season, I think we have a lot to learn from native communities in our state that have been around for tens of thousands of years, that they harvest and process food when it's available. And in our state, with our extreme climate, I think that's a great lesson for all consumers to learn and do. And I think that will increase that number from 5% higher. Also, one of our main priorities coming up in 2026, for the last 4 years, the state has helped support matching program at farmers markets for folks on SNAP benefits. So 7 out of 10 people in our state that are on SNAP benefits or the food stamp program are children. And if we're going to have that number rise from 5% higher, we need to make the food that's being grown here accessible to everyone. And this year is the last year that we have funding to be able to double folks' benefits at farmers markets. And so we're asking the state to fund that program for another 5 years. So consumers, your audience, if they would reach out to their representatives and ask them to support the capital request from the Alaska Farmers Market Association to continue that double up food bucks at farmers markets, we can continue to get the products from our farmers into the mouths of the children of our community and those who need it the most, and obviously those funds into the pockets of farmers.
Yeah, awesome. I know that you've been a farmers market market manager for, you said 13 years. Let's say there's folks out there that live in a neighborhood or a community that doesn't yet have a farmers market. What are some tips that you have for somebody like that wants to start a farmers market but doesn't even know how to start, how to begin?
Well, first I would reach out to the local farmers in your community and see if they're in need of a market. I think going to the producers and these markets have really succeeded in places where there are farmers that are looking to sell their products locally. I think, and next I would recommend folks that are looking to start a farmers market, once again, to go to the Alaska Farmers Market Association website, alaskafarmersmarkets.org. You can go to our resource page. We have an amazing toolkit for folks looking to start farmers market or help folks that have a farmers market develop policies and applications and operations and things like that. That's a really helpful resource for folks that are looking to start a farmers market. But definitely first things first is to reach out and connect with the farmers, see what they need.
Awesome. Now, I know it's called Farmers Market Association, but do you support any other types of business like that, direct sales?
Yeah, we do. And like I said earlier about the increase in the number of farmers selling through farmers markets, CSAs, and farm stands, we also have members that are CSA farmers. That is, if you don't know what a CSA is, it's like Netflix for a farm. You pay for a subscription for the produce for the farm, and all season long, the farmer provides a box of produce all season for their members. We also support folks with a farm stand that's selling directly off their farm. And also another avenue that we support are rural specialty crop markets. There's a couple of rural communities that there's a community member that brings in produce from outside, though they might not have a farmer in that community, bring the food in and sell it as like in the farmer's market setting. And so all of those, we support all of those with our programming and our education and our advocacy. Yeah, all of those are really, the main focus is direct consumer end user. If you think about $1 spent in a local community could be spent up to 13 times in your community before it leaves. It's a really powerful economic driver of our communities where there are markets or farm stands or CSAs or rural specialty crop markets.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Brad, so much for coming on the show. Is there anything else you want to let the listener know about AFMA, or how can we follow AFMA? Is there a Facebook account or Instagram? You guys have a newsletter?
Yeah, we have a newsletter and Facebook account. Check us out. I think the biggest thing that we can encourage the public to do to engage with Farmers Market Association is to shop at their local farmers market. Farmers markets don't only operate in the summertime. Look around. There's probably a winter market if you're in a larger community near you. And so a lot of perception is that it's just seasonal, is that farmers market can go all year long.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. All right, Brad. Again, thank you so much for coming on. I know you're a busy man. You got a lot of hats, but I'll be seeing you in Juneau in a couple weeks. So we'll be advocating for your priorities, AFA's priorities, Farm Bureau's priorities, which a lot of the times line up. So this is great.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Ken. And we'll see you in Juneau.
Yeah, sweet. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening to Ag Matters. Bye-bye, everybody.
You've been listening to Ag Matters, covering positive agriculture stories from across Alaska. Ag Matters is a production of Radio Free Palmer, recorded at our studios in Palmer, Alaska. For more information about this program, email manager@radiofreepalmer.org.